Thanks. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak briefly again on this very important motion on reimbursing the staff of Section 39 agencies. It's an issue, of course, that I've raised several times in this House during 2017, and in particular in supporting the claims of the workers of the Irish Wheelchair Association, and made several representations, obviously, to the Minister for Health, Public Expenditure and Reform, and the Taoiseach during leaders' questions on the 21st of June last year. And the Taoiseach, of course, gave him the usual disingenuous answer by saying that he'd take a dim view of any organisation that used this block grant to give the proper increases to its workforce. In fact, I also wrote to the Taoiseach and Ministers Donoghue and Harrison on the 19th of December asking that they intervene and provide the requisite additional funding to the HSE urgently. And of course, it's a matter that I raised also at the Budgetary Oversight Committee in the context of Budget 2018. And the additional funding, of course, it is long overdue following the Labour Court recommendation on the 20th of November, which found that pay scales between the staff of Section 39 organisations and public servants in the same roles in Section 38 organisations and the HSE generally are indeed aligned and therefore must be restored. At the end of March last year, the Not-for-Profit Association, of which the Irish Wheelchair Association is a member, met with the HSE to discuss the matter of pay restoration to member organisations and their staff. And while the staff of Section 39 organisations are not technically state employees, the pay scales had been historically aligned, and during the crash the same pay cuts were imposed, of course, on Section 39 staff. The HSE and the state's refusal to provide this additional funding to realign the pay scales now put these vital agencies and organisations under tremendous strain, as my colleague Deputy O'Sullivan has just said before me. The HSE directed that the Wheelchair Association would have to go through the state's industrial relation machinery to determine whether or not the pay scales were aligned and pay restoration due, and the IWA and SIPTU took part in the conciliation conference, which was unsuccessful because of the obduracy of the HSE and the state. And the 4th of September, of course, the matter was referred to to the Labour Court. The Irish Wheelchair Association has never, of course, denied that pay restoration is due to its hard-working and dedicated staff completing the same work as diligently as their counterparts in Section 38 organisations, but now for much less money. It is merely said that additional funding would be required in the HSE to meet those pay demands, and the IWA, of course, was unable to meet pay restoration demands from the 1st of April last year. The Labour Court hearing, of course, which was held on 31st of October, provided its recommendation exactly in line with what we had expected, that the pay scales are indeed aligned and therefore pay restoration is due. And I want to thank Mr Paul Bell of SIPTU for giving us interesting information around that process. Before Christmas, a copy of the Labour Court recommendation, LCR 21609, was forwarded to the Taoiseach and Ministers Donoghue and Harris, and makes a very interesting reading, especially given the consistent statements in this House by those ministers that pay was not linked between Section 38 and 39 organisation. We knew, of course, from the October 31 decision that it would be the outcome of the Labour Court recommendation that indeed those pay scales were linked, because during the crash and pay cuts were imposed, the recommendation at that time were that if workers had benefited from pay linkages when salaries increased, then they couldn't seek to break from those linkages when salaries went down. And of course, SIPTU put forward this exact same argument once pay restoration for public servants began under Lansdowne Road. Labour Court recommendation on the 20th of November last, Cancorla stated that the Court has given careful consideration to submission of both parties, and it's clear that the workers' pay is clearly aligned with the HSE pay scales. And that last paragraph, of course, is of the utmost importance, and many trade union representatives and leaders of these organisations feared, of course, that the current impasse is a delaying tactic by the government and the HSE, and that every Section 39 organisation would have to go through the long drawn-out industrial relations process. And the Court went on to say, it appears to the Court that one of the reasons that this matter is before us is because the employer feels obliged to do so in order to satisfy the administrative requirement of the HSE, which is its main funder, rather than seek a resolution. It is not a function of the Labour Court to provide an administrative endorsement to meet the requirements of a third party which is external to the case at hand, and any process requiring such an endorsement could be considered to be an abusive industrial relation process. So this is very, very clear, Cancorla, and of course the additional funding hasn't still been forthcoming. Almost a month later, just before Christmas, the Irish Wheelchair Association only received an acknowledgement of the letter they'd sent to the ministers, and so SIPTU has is now advised, of course, that members will be balloted for strike action and set for a strike on the 14th of February 2018. I think the case has been very strongly made. These workers' pay scales should be restored because they were cut during the height of the bank bailout, and I believe the motions before us therefore are very welcome.
Thank you.